Hello, beautiful souls. I hope you're doing well. Today, it's a pleasure and honor for me to do another creative, intuitive transmission, which has for title today, Unconditional Love. It's in the little things. And it is indeed. So today, the message that the Mella Collective, which is my soul cluster, the guidance, that helps me go through life and experience my life on Terra, but also offers some benevolent guidance to myself and that I love to share with others simply in humility, because it's just my own journey that I share with you in some ways through them. I wanted to, we wanted to, I guess, share about this notion of unconditional love. It is definitely something that many, many starseed envoys have experienced, but not only starseed envoys, many people. But it is typical, let's say, to starseed envoys to have experienced in their early days, in their childhood, or, environments which were not necessarily unconditionally loving, let's say, if which is kind of a euphemism for talking about, either abusive, environments, or toxic, or dysfunctional environments sometimes. And since we're not victims, and nobody is victim of anything, often those are choices of the soul to come into environments in which people will experience that. And the reason for that, obviously, is to develop a sense of empathy, sensibility, or sensitivity, let's say, compassion, because you know what it is not to experience unconditional love. And so it's so traumatizing because, as we know, people upstairs in general, I mean, depending on, if you're regressive, Star Nation or anything like that, but often, people are, when they're in fifth density or higher, they do experience much more unconditional love. And here on Terra, in 3D, unconditional love is a very, very rare thing. I mean, we barely know or barely experience that. And it's disconcerting, but it's a reality and creates a great contrast for souls that arrive in these bodies, as starseed envoys. But again, like I said, no victims. What does it give us the opportunity to learn about ourselves, about life, is that we learn what is missing. And that is as important as receiving what is missing, because when you learn to know what is missing, you're able to say to yourself, nevermore, I will not live that way. I will not choose this fashion of acting towards people, which is not in condition, which is conditional in nature. The love is conditional. It's not based in a soul feeling of a complete, connection to source, where empathy and compassion and respect and love are just naturally flowing in the relationships. So what we're invited today is to be the observer, as always, because, Mella's Collective really insists a lot about mindfulness and this question of being the observer of our lives, because this is how we grow in consciousness and in evolve as souls. And when we are the observer of not only what happens in our world around us, but within ourselves mostly, we are able to be more conscious and act more consciously, and to see how we do things, but mostly what's the agenda behind what motivates our actions and our feelings and our ways of being and doing things. And what is noticeable is that when someone will act in a loving way in order to obtain something in return, when there is that expectation, when there is that agenda of receiving, not necessarily made in a, how can I say, in a regressive way or manipulative way. It's just that many people haven't done the inner work to heal and transmute what they have missed or lacked, and have not learned to give to themselves what they need. So they expect from others to give them what they need: love, validation, attention, whatever. And because of that, because they're not sovereign in order to give themselves what they need, they do things in order to obtain things. So it is a form of perhaps unconscious manipulation, but, and it happens, and it can happen to all of us. I mean, we're all, we all have an ego, and nobody's perfect. And if we're still on earth right now, it's because we're not perfect. And I definitely include myself in this. I've spent my whole life being a people pleaser. And, I'm working a lot on that right now and trying to affirm my boundaries and care less about what people think about me. But it's been a journey for me. And I know I've been the observer of my life patterns. And I've noticed that in the past, mostly in the past, less now, I had done things in order to obtain validation and love and attention from people. So, nobody is excluded from this. It's something that we can all potentially do without sometimes not being conscious of it. So, how do we kind of correct that attitude towards something that is more unconditional in nature? Loving, giving, offering, sharing in an unconditional way. Because the whole definition of unconditional love is a love where you don't expect anything, because your love is not conditional. You don't offer love to the condition that you will receive love in return, or friendship, or attention, or things, or whatever it is you were missing. Unconditional love is a complete flow from source. It's just like an energy. You receive flowingly the energy of source, and you offer it flowingly to others. And this can take the form of money, which is just a form of energy, of love, which is just a form of energy, of gifts of any kind, which is just a form of energy. And when you're fluid in accepting and giving this love, because you're also giving to yourself what you need and what what you're lacking, then you're kind of an antenna that's very clean of any conditional love, in the sense that you don't expect or don't need others to give back in return. And so you don't need to do things in a grand way, because often if you are in great need of attention or validation or love or whatever, you want to make sure, because your love is conditional, you will want to make sure that you make big, these big gestures that everybody notices, because it's good for your ego and you get what you want in return. And because of that, you make sure that these things are impressive and people notice you, and you're like, people are like, oh, this person is so amazing, and he or she is doing this or that. But when your love is unconditional, when you don't have anything to prove, when you're just being yourself, and you give yourself everything that you need, so you're not lacking anything, and you just receive fluidly everything from source in a great amount of plenitude and just generosity from source, and then you offer some of that, most of that back to others, because you take what you need and just give back what what for others, and it's a beautiful flow, and it's a beautiful cycle of receiving and giving. Then you're not into that performance of, doing grand gestures, which are often, embed into conditional love. So this is the reason why the title of this CIT is Unconditional Love. It's in the little things, because when you transcend that need for receiving from others what you should be giving yourself, then you're just naturally wanting to offer to others in just very simple moments of life. You don't need to do grand gestures. And your generosity, or your love, or your unconditional love becomes, in a way, kind of almost like an anonymous way of doing things. You don't think about it. You don't think of, if I do this, I will get that. You're just naturally, it just comes out of you naturally, because you're so filled with that love, with that plenitude of self-confidence and trust and sovereignty and love, and just that, whatever is too much or is exceeding what you can take in, that just naturally flows out of you. And that's how you give to others without even realizing it, without the agenda behind. And often that will take form of very simple gestures. And I wanted to just give some examples today of how we can incarnate and anchor this unconditional love in the very simple little things of life. It can be at a grocery store. You see the cashier, she's having a hard day, she's sweating, she's tired. The person in front of you is acting like an asshole with her. When it comes to your turn, I don't know, for me, it's just so evident that the one thing you want to do to that person is wish them a lovely day and smile to them. Perhaps offer them a compliment about, I love your ring, or what a lovely dress you have. It's not that you take the world on your shoulders and you become like a Christ-like figure who's going to save everybody. It has nothing to do with that. It's just having the empathy and compassion to say, I've had shitty days, and maybe yesterday was my shitty day, and today I can really see this lady's having a shitty day. And I just want to send her my high vibrations, my high frequencies, and tell her, how important she is, or what beautiful work she is, or she's doing, or whatever, because it doesn't matter what you say to her. It's the intention, and it's the vibration and the energy that passes through your intention that is offered there. But it can be done in so many different ways. I don't know, like, I will give examples of how I try to do that. Like, I have a small channel. My YouTube channel is small. And so I don't have millions and millions of comments on my YouTube channel. But for me, it's important to answer every comment with a loving message, or with a loving answer, and sending some high vibes, even if some of the people who might be writing there are not always, benevolent or have benevolent intentions. Doesn't matter. For me, I'm just giving you that because you took the effort of, and writing on my. So it's just, and I'm not doing that because I want to have more subscribers. It's not to smoosh people, like, doing smooshing people to be loved by people. It's just because for me, it's just like, I just feel like being kind to people, and by that, I don't want to say that, oh, I'm special and I love unconditionally. No, I have an ego and I have needs. And sometimes I do love conditionally, and I see myself doing it. And then instead of, shitting on myself, I kind of have the humor to say, look at yourself. You're being a little bit needy there. Why are you needy today? Why do you need the validation of someone today? Okay, maybe it's because I've had a rough day and, I need some good energies. So instead of, searching desperately for that person's or these people's validation, I'm going to go within myself, take a moment to give myself what I need, what my inner child needs in terms of receiving, good things and high vibes. So this way I'm going to be filled up again with these energies of source that I will have given myself, that I will received from source. And then again, I'll be so filled with it that it's going to be my natural pleasure to offer to other people. So I think this is something that we can all do. I remember Alex Collier often says, and I really agree with that, when he comes into any place, a garage, a grocery store, a pet store, a park, he just sends blessings to people. Nobody knows. He does this anonymously. Nobody knows. It's not like he's asking for people to love him back in return, So that's a beautiful example of unconditional love. It's in the little things, because it's in the secret things. It's in the anonymity of the action or the intention. People don't know. Or, like I said about the cashier, and that's just one of 1,000 million examples that we could take. You're going to say to this cashier, I love your blouse. It's really lovely. It fits you well with your eyes, or whatever, something. And she's going to be like really in her shitty day. And so she's going to be like, oh, thank you. She's not going to realize at the moment, because she's still in her going through the rough day. But, she might be realizing this like 3 hours later at the end of her shift. And she's going to be like, oh, that felt good. And maybe she's not even going to remember who you were, what you looked like, what you said, but just she received that little thing that changed her day somehow. And, for me, this has become one of my priorities of life. I mean, not just harmony, which is another big priority right now in my life, but like to try to make sure that every action I do, maybe something I give through words or through objects or through energies, to be conscious of it and be the observer. Am I doing this conditionally or unconditionally? And if it's conditionally, I stop right away because I know it's not the right place to do it from. And then I give myself what I need in order to later give with a better unconditional state of mind, if you want. And so what I'm trying to say is that, again, like I said, I'm definitely not Christ-like. I definitely have my ego and my needs and stuff. But I think it's a beautiful thing for all of us, including myself, to just try to make this consciously and to try to bring in every one of our actions, in every one of our words towards people, how can I be of love, of unconditional love? How can I be of gentleness, of softness, of benevolence, of empathy, of compassion? How can I do this in every gesture? You know, I'll give you an example. It happened to me lately. I was talking with friends about, there was a discussion about a person, and I ended up seeing myself saying things about that person that I didn't thought were very benevolent. And on top of it, that was a discussion about a person that wasn't even there. So it was kind of in their back. So in a way, I felt kind of ambushed there. I was like, oh, because I love that person, but I didn't necessarily agree with everything that person was doing. So I kind of took that opportunity that everybody was kind of bashing that person to just say things about that person that I didn't agree with. And I was like, look at yourself, look at yourself. So, that's what I'm saying, the unconditional love is really tough. And sometimes we end up in situations where our ego gets caught up in the discussion or in the situation, and we don't realize, if we're not the observer, that our words are not unconditionally loving. We love a person, but we don't like that she or he does this or that. And then, we're going to bitch about that, talk about, not being benevolent and empathic, So I realized that, and consciously I realized that. And after that, I went to these people and I said, I'm sorry. Like, I just felt ambushed in the situation, and I have said things to you guys about this person that I regret, and I didn't want to say these things, and I don't feel really proud of myself that I did that. And for me, I took it as a signal. I said to myself, never more will I be caught up in a situation where people are being like, and I'm gonna, like, bitch and say something that's not loving regarding a person. That doesn't mean that I agree with everything that everybody does, but I don't think that's a good excuse to bitch about someone else in their back. So the point is, for me, it was a lesson, because I felt really guilty. I feel really bad about that. I was like, that was really conditional love. It was really low. And so for me, it was an experience, that was a negative experience, but it gave me the opportunity to say, never more will I be caught up, in a situation where I'll be, saying bad words about someone. May they be here or not, or whatever. I'll just try to be in that benevolent, unconditional love for who they are, even if they're not perfect, and even if they have done that are not things that I don't agree with. So that, just to give you an example of how the observer within us can notice conscious and or unconscious behavior that we can correct in order to incarnate more and more this unconditional love. Because, again, that person never knew that I said these things about him or her, but I knew. And again, it's in the little things that it's going to make a difference in your life. It's in the way in which, when a group of people are going to say things that you're going to think to yourself, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to judge the people who are saying these things, but I'm not going to go there. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go into that conditional way of loving people. So I'm just going to be more aware of that next time. So again, it's in the little things, because it's really, the way you talk to the janitor when you walk into a place. It's the place in which you say the little word that will change someone's day just because they're having a shitty one. It's the way you will, I don't know what, there's so many examples of ways in which you can incarnate and anchor that unconditional love without doing it with the purpose of being, oh, look at me, I'm so cool, I'm so Christ-like. It's really like those little things that change everything. The way you hold the door to someone, the way you offer your seat to an older person or disabled person. I don't know. It's not about being a good girly or a good boy. It's not that at all. It's just naturally you springing out of your chair and saying, hey, have that seat. Just because it's just natural. It's in the little things. So, I don't want to give 100 million other examples of how it's in the little things. I think the message went through, passes through. I think you all know what I mean by, when we do things unconditionally, we know it. We know it in our heart, the vibration, the frequency of it. We know that we're not doing it in order to be a good girl or a good boy. It's not because we're smooshing people. It's just because it's natural. It's just overflowing from us to be in this kindness and this benevolence and respect, and so it's just natural, and it's unconsciously done. It's just just natural, and we know that. So it was just a reminder of that today. So to anchor and incarnate this beautiful, inspiring message from the Mella Collective into the reality of our 3D world, I like to use iconography, as always, which is the symbolism of representation, to anchor the information through a visual image, which sometimes help us remember things or anchor them, visually. So the background that we have today, that was inspired to me by the Mella Collective here, represents this forest, which is trees in autumn. And most of the trees are very tall, very thin, and they have lost all their leaves. So it's a little bit of a desertic, a little bit of a empty kind of landscape. It's not sad because it's warm with the autumn colors, but all of these trees are individually standing, in that forest. They're alone. They don't have leaves anymore. And for me, they really represent this notion of each of us as individuals being in our pain, being in our loneliness, being in our suffering, and just, having lost everything like many of us have. And we're just like standing in that forest in that sunlight, and we just feel a little bit naked and vulnerable and alone, And so I think this is kind of a metaphor for humanity on Terra right now in 3D, like how everybody has been suffering and just, caught up with their pain. And some of them have worked a little bit on themselves, which could be representing the leaves, because some have still leaves, because they're nourishing themselves and they're offering to themselves what they need, and they receive from source and give back. So there is kind of a little bit more liveliness about them. But there's other trees like this one who is just, bare and empty and lonely and have lost everything that mattered to them. And so it's their responsibility to find their sovereignty, go within, and give themselves what they have lost. And when they will be in that circle of giving and receiving again, their tree will, their branches and their leaves will kind of come back. Obviously this is just a metaphor, but this is how I see this. And in the middle of that forest, that in the background, in kind of in the background, there is that beautiful, warm, rosy, golden light, which I could associate with source, which gives light to these trees, but it's not doing the work for them. Source is there to give the light, but then if the trees are not individually, and again metaphorically, doing what's necessary to enliven themselves and heal themselves and treat themselves with respect and love to give themselves what they need, there's, even if source light is there, they're still going to feel empty and bare. But then there can be individuals or people who have done a lot of work and have filled themselves with what they need, that can work as reminders of the unconditional love of source. And this is for me represented by this young lady who's just bare feet. She's a simple woman, she doesn't have she's not like a princess or anything. She's just like a simple everyday woman. She's there bare feet in that forest, and she's sitting there, and she's, again, it's a funny image, she's turning on a light in the middle of that bare kind of sad forest. And for me, it really represents the actions that all of us can take, which, again, are unconditional, loving in nature, where you just are so filled with that love within yourself, for yourself, by yourself. Then after that, you just exude and radiate that love for others. And you do it, you open these little lights everywhere in the bare forest for everyone, just by just being you and being loving and being humorous and joyful and bringing high vibes and bringing beauty and bringing, support, bringing kindness, empathy. By listening, by hearing, sometimes you do more good for someone than trying to bring them some answers. Personally, one of the most amazing, beautiful way in which we can be a light into someone's life or bring some unconditional love into their life is to make them feel like they are seen and that they are heard. When someone confides in you in their problems, about their problems, just making them feel heard is an amazing gift of unconditional love. Same thing for I'm seeing you. You know, a lot of people are so caught up in their own ego and stuff that they're just ignoring others. Like they don't care, whatever. It's another person that did that for me, or, they just don't acknowledge what's been done or given to them. And it's sad because, in a way it proves that they still need more and more and more and more from the exterior instead of being grateful for what they receive. And in that way, they're not saying to the people who offer them things, I see you. Or, they just go about their life caught up in their ego and problems, and they don't see anyone around them. And so they're just expecting things conditionally. They want things, rather than being in gratitude and saying, I see you, I hear you, thank you. Thank you for everything you are. Thank you for everything you do. And it's not going to hurt your mouth or your tongue by saying to people, thank you, or to be grateful, because gratitude doesn't take away anything from you. And for some people, it's like it hurts their tongue to actually say thank you or I'm sorry, and it's just amazing for me to see that, because it's like if by saying that would make them weak or vulnerable, or if they were like they would lose something. For me, it's just incomprehensible. Like the more you say, the more gratitude you offer to others, the more you're capable of being in humility and say, oh, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake, I didn't do this, I was unkind, or and you feel so liberated after that. You're just like, you feel good, and you feel in humility because you said, oh, well, I wasn't at my best here, and but that doesn't take away anything from you. On the contrary, it makes you strong and conscious that you realize that you did an error, or that you acted in a way that was perhaps not as loving as you would have liked to. Or when you offer gratitude to people, when you tell them how amazing they are, or you thank them for what they do or for what they are, it doesn't take anything away from you. On the contrary, it fills you with more love. The more you give, the more you receive. The more you give, the more you receive. And that's how Source works. That's how Source works. Now, second piece of iconography here to actually, incarnate or anchor the message of today's CIT is a collage of Japanese washi chiyogami paper I did, which is entitled Aranayä, and it is spelled here, Aranayä. So let me move a little bit so we can see Aranayä better. So Aranayä here, for this collage to illustrate this message, I used the background paper of a motif of golden stars on a navy blue background. And for me, this paper, I always use this paper to illustrate the notion of us being fractals of Source. Or also sometimes I associate it with the beautiful nature of our soul, which is, Source-like in a way. So it's a paper that for me illustrates a high level of spirituality, of connection to our soul and to the fractal of Source that we are, and that we want to incarnate as, unconditionally loving souls that do things in an unconditional way, through the little things, through the little gestures, through the little words, through, everything. So the background illustrates how we are fractals of Source, and that we can incarnate and anchor that Source into each of our actions and words through, by our intentions that would be unconditional in nature. Then we have this central large circle, which is navy blue with a lot of white and blue birds in flight, which for me represent, if you want, the liberation and the blooming and the taking flight of your whole being that you feel when you are in an unconditionally loving stance and posture in which you give and offer and live your life in a place of unconditional love and where you don't expect things. So it's so liberating because you give yourself what you need. You don't expect from others, and source gives you, and you give back and you give back, and it's just amazing. And you just feel so free and liberated. So this is how it's, this is what this central circle represents. And in the middle of it, we have a smaller circle in the center, which is red, and for me always represents the heart. So the heart connection, because it is through the heart connection only, and consciousness as well, which is part of being in the posture of the heart, is that it's only through the connection of the heart that we can be conscious, and that we can do things unconditionally, with unconditional love, because we're not in our brains, our egos that tell us, oh, you should do this to get that. And, you're just in your heart. And when you're in your heart, you're connected to your soul, and you just, things just flow naturally. In the lower circle, which is a little bit smaller, it represents kind of blue motifs of waves, but also flowers. And for me, this represents the connection to Terra, the Terran life. So the flowers and the waves for me represent the way in which we can anchor this unconditional loving posture into the everyday things, in the little things, in the words that we say, in the actions that we do, in the everyday people that we love, or that we offer help to or care for, and things like that. So it's in the way we treat objects, animals, plants, beings around us. It's in the little things, but it's in the incarnated Terran things as well. It's not just about being kind to the universe and the stars, and it's also being kind to even the challenging people, challenging things, situations. It's to incarnate that there as well. Then in the upper circle, we have a black background, a circle with a black background, but golden words, which is Japanese script. And for me, this represents the notion of that even if there is a black background, meaning a little bit of a darker or more challenging situation that we are facing in our lives, we are always encouraged and invited, in this case by the Mella Collective, to use our words or our intentions or our actions as golden elements that come to bring solace, bring high vibrations to a darker or more challenging context. So whatever we receive may be very shitty. If we are filled with our own light and with our own self-love, we are capable of bringing to that dark, challenging situation some golden words of love, of unconditional love, which for me, gold always represent the color or the essence of source. And on that note, finally, we have those two branches, which are also made of gold, with the flower of life motif, which for me represents obviously the source creator, Mella. And in that representation here, in that collage, those two branches, if you want, represent a loving, enveloping support of source, but also the unconditional, loving, source-like being that we are, because we are a fractal of source, that we can be for ourselves, but for others as well, and kind of enveloping, situation, people, things with that unconditional love posture and posture, if you want. So this is how I used Aranayä to illustrate this message shared today by the Mella Collective. Aranayä's original is available, as well as the digital file is available on my website at abigaëllerichard.com, and both the original and the digital file are always imbued with the high frequencies and the beautiful message that is inspired today by the Mella Collective, through the colors, through the disposition of the motifs, but also through the energy that is obviously offered from me to you while I'm doing the collage. So I hope this CIT was helpful to you today, in the sense that sometimes I've noticed that most of these creative intuitive transmissions serve as reminders, because I know that all of you are very intelligent and very brilliant, very wise souls. So it's not like I'm teaching you anything. Like, oh my God, that's the worst thing. I'm not teaching anything. I am just like you, a person going through my life with experiences, with challenges, learning from them, and trying to be more conscious. And I'm just sharing here in humility my own experiences, what I've learned. And what I bring here, as I said, doesn't make you learn new things. It's just a reminder for today. Maybe you've had today an experience where you're going through challenging times and you're wondering, oh, I haven't been very unconditionally loving. I was very conditional in my love, or so, or maybe it's just a way to inspire you to perhaps be more conscious in your everyday actions. How can you do this more lovingly, more unconditionally lovingly? So it applies to me as well, for sure. But as long as we can laugh at ourselves in a loving way and notice, oh my God, I've done this in that way again today. Okay, I have to be careful next time. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'll try to do it less and less. And, it's just, we're learning, and we have to be loving and unconditionally loving towards ourselves as well. And just give ourselves a break sometimes, and just accept that we're born with egos, and we're just working on that. So I send you lots of love, dear beautiful beings. And again, I encourage you to incarnate and anchor the unconditional love that you are as a fractal of Source, and that you receive from Source and from yourself. Take great care of yourself. Much love. Bye. All my gratitude for helping this channel bring high vibrations and high frequencies to more people. Ooh.